Hi, in this video example we will showcase an automated workflow that involves chaining together two pipeline executions while bringing supplementary data from the Google Maps Geocoding API. First, let's look at our resources defined in the Quantemplate app. Our first pipeline produces an output that contains log name column with address for geocoding. Let's navigate to Outputs tab and see our output. It also includes a log name column, which will be useful for join stage in the second pipeline. This pipeline output, after finished pipeline execution, will be downloaded by our orchestration program and enriched with the data from the Google Maps API. But before going to the next step, take a look at the URL. It contains ID of the organization, ID of the pipeline, and ID of its output. We will need that information later down the road. Now, let's take a look at the second pipeline. Go to the pipeline drawer and choose your second pipeline. This one accepts a dataset as one of its inputs. The data from the first pipeline's output enriched by the Google Maps API will be uploaded here. Our second pipeline is not as complicated as the first one. Here we are only using a join stage with a map column headers operation, which will help us to differentiate the data from the Google Maps API from the other sources. Also, make sure that all of the pipelines and datasets are shared with the whole org with editable permissions. This can be done from sharing pop-up. Now we need to equip ourselves with the actual orchestration program. It is an open source tool which leverages Quantemplate public API offering, so you can extend it yourself or build a similar one from scratch. To download the program, go to github.com/Quantemplate/IP integrations, releases, and download the latest jar from the latest release. The configuration of our orchestration helper is taken from the environment variables, which could be created in a simple .env file and later exported. So in here we have API query for Google Maps API, two constants which will be prod for any Qt consumer, and Qt for Qt alveol variable, and ID and secret of the API client, which will be provided to you by the Quantemplate team. Now, let's open a command prompt and export those variables with a simple script. As you can see, I've written it before, and in here I've pointed at different .env file. This one includes my own credentials. Next up is the YAML file with parameters for our orchestration program. As you can see in here, we are using the cleanse addresses command, which is executed against this organization. And as for the source, we are using a pipeline with this particular ID. This is the first pipeline described area, and we are extracting data from output of that name, and in particular from the column with log name header. We will also need log name as our ID column, which will be used for the join operation. As for the target, we will use a dataset, which is an input for the second pipeline, which will be executed immediately after the dataset is enriched with the data from the Google Maps API. with a configured YAML file and an environment variables in our session, we can now start the orchestration helper by just typing Java, pointing to our jar, typing apply, and pointing to our configuration YAML file. Depending on the pipeline complexity and the size, the run could take a few minutes to complete. The program should inform you about the progress on each step. After the execution of the second pipeline has been finished, you can go to its output and take a look at the results. In particular, we are interested in those with the G prefix, as those were added by the map converters operation and are coming from the Google Maps API. So this is all for this demo, but you can check out more examples at Quantemplate.readme.io, where we have integrations with the Capital Q, Azure, and other connectors. Take care.